So what do you think?
Number 5.
Number 5.
Um,
Asserts that the nature of our identities is not true or natural, but seem to be because of consistency and persistence. Why do you think that, Ian?
What's about, who's that?
Vince is
yeah.
the one that comes back?
The one that comes back, like, because he didn't show any persistence for like 6 years, so they just assume that he doesn't exist, and then when he comes back, they try to create his new identity.
So that's an interesting interpretation. You say because of his lack of persistence, he lost his identity.
Yeah.
Okay?
Number 6.
How so?
Because they're in a weird place and they don't have like any technology really. It seems like, and it seems like they still rely on like corn and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, like a railroad.
And so, all right, to even,
Is that
right,
It
so-
seems really like it's, they're really outdated.
right, the people in the house are living in a, almost like a past world,
Yeah.
right? And here comes Vince and Sally, I think her name is. And they come, it almost seems like they come from a completely
Yeah.
different world. And so that's true too. Haley?
Number 2, questions our ability to accurately see and understand ourselves and our culture. Because Vince is stripped of his identity, so he's not really sure of himself, and he's not really sure of how others see him and how he should see himself. And so that's why he ends up losing it.
Right,
He's
right.
questioning it.
That's a good point. We know he loses everything, including his identity. So is that it? Can anyone find another one?
2, 5, 6.
What about 7? Can anyone make an argument for number 7? And very child? Somebody take a chance.
People live in a rural place, they are less literal. I don't know.
All right. Haley, what do you think?
It's kind of an unusual situation, if you think about it. It's not really, I mean, I guess it could happen, but it's really, really out there. So in a way, it's kind of like, so it's a created reality by the writer of the play.
Right, so the writer of the play, Sam Shepard,
Yeah.
creates this world and he uses language to do that. Right? And so even when Vince loses his identity, language does that too, the language of the play.
And then also, it's biased because who's to say that someone will lose their mind if their identity is stripped of them?
Right, so it's very traumatized. It's
I don't know.
no, that's a good point. All right. So what else did we talk about? Can anyone remember what we talked about with Barry Child? What were some of the other things we discussed? Because not only do we need to understand what characteristics of contemporary literature fit these stories, but how did we talk about this? Remember, we're jumping right into contemporary literature. We just finished up with the introduction. And then we get to watch this really bizarre play. Do you remember what we talked about?
Yeah.
What did we talk about, Jim?
It was like the setting of the play.
What about the setting?
There's like dark and the characters are see.
Right, so we talked about even how the characteristics of the setting and the people in the play reflected what was going to happen, right? It almost foreshadowed what was going on. Good. What else did we talk about? What was the main idea we talked about? Remember, throughout the unit, we've talked about everything from grace to salvation to identity. What was it that we focused in on this one? Somebody take a guess.
Being stripped of it?
Stripped of what?
Losing your identity.
Right, so this is a story, and it's important to note, this is a story in which we really began to speak about the idea of identity and losing it and what happens at that point. Right, so we really want to make sure we know that this is where we mark that. So we can make connections. Say, for instance, if we know in a separation we talked about identity, if we also did in buried child, there's that link between the two, all right? All right, so we don't necessarily have to go in order here, so that was just an example of how we would do buried child. So I want someone to pick one, any of the other 6, and you're gonna lead us through the discussion on it.
I should try to pick up